Happy Thursday, special time edition, and welcome to today's episode of Tech Bites. We have a very special episode here for you today. I am Rick Vanover, the Rickatron, joining you live from Central Ohio, and I had to ask my co-presenter to set her alarm clock a little bit early here today. Joining us from Tempe, Arizona, Emilee, how you doing?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day outside.
Well, is the sun even up yet? That's the main question. I don't know. Hey, it's a busy week at Veeam, friends. We have a great topic lined up for you. So as I said, I'm in Central Ohio. Emilee is coming to us from Arizona. We also have producers on the line in Texas, another one in Ohio, but we want to know where you're from. I did just get on Twitter or LinkedIn, and Victor Wu is tuning in from Macau. Look out. Whoa. Mateus, we got a great crowd here. Let's rock it. Emilee, big news this week. We are really excited. So we're going to really find everyone where they're at and tell them about the big news this week. And Jeff, why don't you go ahead and load the share? Emilee, set up the big news that we had here this week.
Well, we are post 90 days in from one of our largest acquisitions, and we're already announcing product, which is pretty crazy when we think about it in terms of how fast we're innovating with integrations between some of the wonderful capabilities with Securiti AI and their DSPM-based solutions, and then what Veeam does very well, which is protect good data from bad things that happen, right? So we had a great launch announcement that happened on Tuesday with Rayhan being able to go through what it is that Veeam is looking to do and what we're looking to solve with organizations that are leveraging AI agents specifically for different types of use cases, right? So if we're looking at, leveraging our day-to-day AI agents to help us be more productive, to be able to help us understand, what it is that we have access to or what data our company or organization holds, and then they accidentally or we have some type of misconfiguration and they delete said data, how do we bring that data back? And how do we ensure that, we're not causing harm internally ourselves by leveraging all the wonderful capabilities that AI agents have to offer? So we had this wonderful opportunity to talk about, what it is that we're seeing, not only just even in the field today, but how we're going to help customers solve this problem, right? And so that way, when they feel comfortable or they'll feel more comfortable in being able to go through this process of actually leveraging AI at a very safe and be able to leverage that at scale.
Yeah, you mentioned like protecting from bad things. That is like super important because we are at a very important inflection point in the sense because Emilee, you and I grew up preparing for fire, flood, and blood and ransomware and bad things like this, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's become very well. Now when we look back at it, we're like, well, now it's a little bit easier for us because we could prepare, right? We have experience to understand when things are going to go bad. We have an opportunity to understand when we have to prepare for a disaster recovery scenario. Okay, what does our secondary DR site looks like? What is the types of resources that we're going to utilize? What's the recovery point objection that we need to be able to hit from our teams or for our business in order for our business to continue to be operating, right? And we don't really have to worry too much about, data being lost or, the identities changing. We could actually do a very significant plan for that type of event. And then when we get into this era of cyber resiliency, and now we have to think about, okay, outside threats, cyber attacks, exfiltration events, ransomware events, this then changes the game where we're thinking about targeted cyber events. And now maybe our recovery points are a little bit less unknown because we have to do our due diligence when we're going through to recover our data because we want to make sure we're not reintroducing any new risk into a clean environment. And there's also some additional capabilities in there where we have to start thinking about data sprawl. Well, if a threat actor goes in and they exfiltrate data, well, now I have data that could be sensitive, could be not, that now lives somewhere out there on the dark web. And, we have to think about that in terms of what does that do from a compliance, from a regulations, from a legal ramification that could potentially be impactful or harmful to our business. And now, as we go into this era of 2025, 2026, we have this AI resiliency era. And so now it's no longer planning for disaster recovery and operational loss and cyber recovery with outside threat actors. But now we have to think about AI and what are we doing with our teams internally here that have or can build their own agents, or they have their own agents that are already deployed from a company perspective, and they're overprivileged. They have too much access to different data sets within the company. How can we go ahead and perform recoveries and make it very surgical, right? We only want to bring back the data that the agent had impacted, that they deleted. So we have to think about those types of recovery points versus, well, we just can't roll it all back. And then when we think about the recovery times, we want to make sure that that's going to be fast, right? We need to make sure that we have that fast recovery in order to make sure that business can continue operating. And then last but not least, we are also thinking about the identities. Now it's no longer a human-based identity. We have to think about these non-human-based identities, where they exist, what types of permissions do they have, what types of access to the data that they have. Because essentially, AI is really great use case, but it does have to have a broad range of privileges and access to information in order to create the workflows that we might need. But is sometimes over permissioned a little too much and can cause bad things to happen to the data that we don't intentionally want happen. That definitely is the case, right? So now we're in an era where, as those of us that operate in a day-to-day world of we need to keep business operations running, well, now we have to think about some of these other items that can definitely impact the business, and we need to have a way in which we can actually recover this data. And I think the one thing that we always state here at Veeam is that, did it really matter what happened or who caused the outage or who caused the data to be lost? Essentially, we want you to be able to recover your data, whether it's the full set or at a very granular based surgical precision. That is something that we've done very, very great at, and we continue to do well at. So it only made sense for us to be able to work together and be able to introduce this new integration that's coming this year.
Now, the one thing, Emilee, that really sticks out to me on this, and I want to bring it home as a practical example, right here, this exfiltration concern. Now, very clear on the cyber resiliency side of the world, right? Threat actors, that's really a great avenue for them. But what I want the world and the audience here to know, a great audience here, keep it coming in the map where y'all are tuning in from. This, from an AI resiliency, we're calling this a high exfiltration concern. Why? Have you ever built an AI agent? I have. I'm by no means am I an AI guru, but even in Copilot, I have made agents where I feed in data and I have shared it with someone. Am I classifying that data? I don't know. Am I making sure that it's right for that person and then the outputs that go for? I don't know. Think about that. Even as simple as Copilot. This is a very nuclear example that all of us can really get into. And then when we think about this on scale, there's really 4 other different challenges of AI resiliency that go with this. And that example that I spoke of can really kind of hit 2 and maybe 3, maybe even all 4 of these types of challenges with AI resiliency strategies. But Emilee, when we walk through this, each of these pillars really carry their own significant discussion on what really organizations don't know could be happening.
Absolutely. And everybody's going to have these challenges. On anybody that's listening right now or tuning in or watches later Right, you're not alone in this. As organizations start to become more mature, your workers start to become more mature, they feel more comfortable with utilizing tools. I mean, we're in this world where, anybody can have access to AI from a Gen AI perspective, right, on their phones. Very different, these days. And so when they have access to do something in their day-to-day personal life and then taking that into their business, their work, to try to make things easier, to try to help them to be able to minimize overhead or help with reducing operations or just making the everyday workflow process easier. Well, now we have to kind of think about, well, what's the data that they're possibly feeding into those tools? But then more specifically, is that data going to be sensitive? Is that data going to create additional risk for the business? And as somebody from an internal IT perspective, right, we're also thinking about, well, why do they feel like they need to feed that data to an outside portion of the business, right? Is it because the tools that we have currently available aren't doing what they need? So what do we have to do to make sure that that data all stays within house? So it does create a significant problem, and it does create some significant challenges that all organizations are going to come with, right? And so we have to start thinking about an overall governance. Number one, like, how are we going to not only understand how many of these AI agents exist within our ecosystem or within our business, but then on top of that, how do we govern those, right? How do we know like what data, what access they are going to have, what types of permissions or actions can they go ahead and they can take on behalf of the user or behalf of whatever permissions that we've given to it. And then is the data that's underneath it that it has access to actually being protected, right? Do we have somewhere that we can roll it back to? Do we have multiple copies of that data? And then on top of that, how do we actually roll back to only recover the precise data that we need? There are so many, I believe, news articles that are out there, even as earlier as like a few days ago, right, where you hear about somebody in the news that they're building their own agents and they granted it access to something as simple as either their email or they gave it access to content database, and all of a sudden it started to delete or remove certain data sets or emails or very important data that the user needed, right? And it's just because they're looking at, how can I help make myself more efficient, right? Hey, go structure these emails based off of top priority that I need to go and look at, or hey, go remove some of this content that is old, stale, that maybe we don't need to be looking at anymore. And because it has some of that access, right, it could kind of take that and remove and or delete. So we're seeing a lot of those types of issues and challenges that are happening within an organization, and being able to recover that data and pull it back is so important, specifically now when we have to think about that from the overall business impact.
Let's take that nuclear example of the Copilot agent that I made and shared. I really am doubling down on negative sentiment. Why? Because I wrote it. Do I have no bias in it? Maybe not. Think about that. When organizational corporate citizens are making their own AI agents, there is very little oversight from that. Any company I talk to, they're getting pressure of, proceed with AI initiatives, empower individuals. There's an incredible risk here. And I think that just paints the picture of how this Agent Commander solution can help. And got a message from the producer that the map is ready. Fantastic crowd. I want to give a special shout out to Ricky Al-Qassam, my man, out in the UK. So let's start in the Americas. We got some California love. We got Wisconsin. We've got Canada in the Americas. Going down south, that's Brazil and Chile. I don't even need it zoomed in. I can see that. Let's go to EMEA, kind of north. And we've got UK, Germany, Austria, I think, looking at pictures. And then if we go pick a region next, Jeff, that's looks like India and ooh, I don't know. I got to look. Oh, Angola. Welcome. Angola might be a first. And then Victor Wu in Macau, way over there. I don't even know if it's going to hit the There it is. We got India. We got looks like is that Thailand? No, that's Malaysia. That's Malaysia because it also goes over to the island, and then way somewhere small in there is Macau. So big welcome everyone. That's a great crowd, and got some good chats here. I'm trying to stay up here, but Emilee, right on time with all of that stuff. But let's walk through, you know, this broader picture of the connectors that, this is kind of the pure play Securiti AI stack and how it can feed into what we're doing with Agent Commander and some of these like top level benefits on both sides here. Maybe you can pick one and then I'll pick one and we'll just get through all six, but you go first.
Sure. Yeah. So one of probably the biggest ones, and this is nothing new, right? Every organization is probably doing this to some extent, right? Sensitive data discovery. What data do we actually have? And is this data something that is sensitive? Is it deemed to be confidential? Where does it sit? Where does it exist? I think we hear this all the time with organizations where, they jump started their cloud strategy. They went and they started porting a bunch of data into S3 buckets, and guess what? They never actually went through and actually locked them down, and they're exposed externally all over the internet, and they're finding out about that, now. So sensitive data discovery is a pretty big one, and I know that for a lot of organizations, especially enterprises that have petabytes of data, right? This could be very hard for us to kind of grab a hold over. And there's a lot of different tools out there that could help with this. But that is part of this whole data command graph and this idea here in terms of, well, let's just actually understand first, what data do we have? And is it sensitive? Is it safe for us to be utilizing for any type of AI initiative?
I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick both the rot analysis and the breach impact analysis because those are really powerful, understandable terms for like this kind of existing Veeam audience. Rot stands for redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. I guarantee you, this is a set of technologies that will be an eye-opening journey for either you as an end user or if you're a Veeam partner for your clients. Making this map here, the data command graph in the middle where different flows are made. And then when you think about, and I'll pause it right here, take something like this application where it's in this cloud, in that identity, in this data, a breach impact analysis. Imagine doing that before an incident. What a powerful set of visibility that organizations can have. I like to say, really now, Veeam is at the heart of the supply chain of data with this type of visibility. All right. We got to keep moving. Emilee, which one do you pick next?
The compliance tests and controls, I think that's huge, right? There's new cyber laws that are coming out. I feel like almost every other month in terms of specific countries, specific states, different types of jurisdiction, and this becomes very important, right? Especially when we start talking about different AI use cases. So being able to kind of focus in on that compliance and being able to feed into the platform, the types of different rules or regulations that your company needs to adhere by. So if it's HIPAA, if it's PIH, or PHI, or if it's any of those types of sets of compliance rules that your company needs to abide by, right? You could feed that into the platform, and you can ensure that essentially that you're following all the best practices and that you have those compliance controls set in place.
Yeah, fantastic. The one thing I'll add to that is that this capability is really built with a lot of those compliance logics into it. Now, I'm going to pick access control intelligence. That one is really powerful. I've been at Veeam 16 years. I guarantee you, I probably have access to things I don't need anymore. Maybe even the data's changed since I've been using it initially. Imagine having an AI-powered mechanism to really indicate the access and the level of permissions, identifying certificates that aren't being changed, passwords that aren't being rotated. This is really powerful stuff as well. And then kind of the utopia of it all. Emilee, tell us about AI governance.
So AI governance is what you end up getting when you're able to fold all these different types of use cases and problems and deliver that overall solution, right? Because now we know the types of data that we're going to be utilizing in terms of any type of AI project. Now we know the way that if we were to have some type of mistake or some type of outside activity or insider cyber threat, whatever it may be, that has caused issues into our data, we know how we can actually go about and solve that. So when we start talking about that overall AI governance, this helps to provide us with that strategic framework for how we should be going about tackling some of these use cases in terms of how our business is going to be leveraging different types of AI rules and AI policies. And, we didn't drive into the big portion of this, right? Which is that the fact that this can connect to over 350 different types of data sets, right? And so when we're thinking about that in terms of your public cloud, your data clouds, private clouds, SaaS-based workloads, all of the rich information and data that is held there, and then even your AI models, right? This is what's going to allow you to do that overall discovery of how all those different parts of your ecosystem are being utilized. So that way you can build yourself a better strategic framework overall.
So that is the market we're going into. And I think to put this all together, Emilee, now's the time to really walk through what Agent Commander really brings to the party, lack of a better words. And for those of you on the chat, by the way, I love the engagement here. I want to say just a question to you watching the stream. Does this make sense? A lot of you know Veeam, data protection, resiliency, backup. But in this new era, these new data sources, tell me, do you see the line? Let us know in the chats. Felicia will pick it up. So when we talk about Agent Commander, Emilee, really there's three primitives, lack of a better words, because we use pillar too many. So I'm going to go with primitives here. Detect AI. The way I've been telling this story, I'll let you cover this tile here, is that the end result is that bottom right one. But tell me how you bring Detect AI to the party.
Yeah, so it's going back to that original slide right before this, number one, connecting to all your different data sets so that way we can inventory what you're currently utilizing today, get a grasp over the AI agents that have already been deployed within your ecosystem, get a grasp over the models that are currently being utilized, right? This is a great way for us to overall do an inventory. I mean, this will be a great opportunity for us to take a question, put it in the chat, right? Do you know how many AI agents are currently active within your organization, right? Do you know if it's the personal agents or are they more that are built for a business use case that are available? I could tell you even here at Veeam, we probably, each one of us has 5 generic AI agents that are available for us to be utilizing at any point in time, but we also have access to create some of our own. So, when you start thinking about that in terms of how that has a overall impact to the business, that can get pretty crazy. It could grow quite a bit. So being able to have an inventory of all of those data sets and understand what it is that they're doing is probably the first step here as part of that Detect AI.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important uh, foundational primitive of what Agent Commander brings to the party, because without that, we can't get into any type of protection conversation. So when we think about as it's detected, then we have to label it, understand what's in there, sanitize the data. Take my primitive example of making an AI agent. I shared it with Kirsten, a friendly of the show. Now, luckily, I personally know that data was good and fine to go to her, but not everyone is such a great corporate citizen, so it might not be always that way. But when you think about folks building their own things or even isolated work groups, this is like a next generation shadow IT of sorts. We can have AI powered tools that are enforcing the least privileged access. We can have these files labeled. We can have this data sanitized so that the end result is that as agentic solutions are deployed across the world, though there will be secured prompts, retrievals, and responses will be in line, in policy compliant, not releasing new data. So when we think about these flows, it actually kind of checks out. Now, the last part of it, this is where kind of the heart and soul of where we live at Veeam. What happens when things don't go as expected?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What happens when your AI agent goes and deletes all your emails or deletes all this content database or starts making some changes and overriding existing data, right? This is where it becomes very important in terms of how can we get that data back? How we get it back to its original what it originally looked like, right? And so this undo AI piece becomes very, very relevant because this is ensuring that number one, we're protecting the data in terms of we have backups of this data itself, right? And then on top of that, we go and we can actually see the type of activity that this agent went by and they went and they performed. And then understanding any types of changes that they're making to those files across the data state. And then if that change was bad, or maybe it was something that was unintended, how can we actually restore that file back and restore it back with precision, right? We want to just grab that specific file that was made the change. We don't need to roll back the entire engine. We just need to grab the specific changes. So that's going to be the big portion in there, right? Is that granular overall recovery. And again, like we said, it doesn't matter from a Veeam perspective. We don't care what happens to the data, if it was from an AI agent, if it was from a natural disaster, if it was from a ransomware or cyber event. Essentially, we want to be able to recover the data regardless on who did the damage. And so that's where that undo AI portion really comes into play here with Veeam.
So I'm going to put the audience on the spot. Each of these three, detect, protect, and undo, we can cover one of those in more detail. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to put it to the audience. Let us know in the chat. There is about some latency, so we'll have to see what comes in. And Felicia, be quick on the click if you could. But friends, what do you want to see? More information on detect, protect, or undo? All right, we got a couple of streams going. I'm going to look in here real quick. We got Gibbs from South Africa. So many South Africa. Tyler, I apologize for not correctly representing how big Canada is. So welcome. Mo's tuning in. Hin, hello. It's a lot of great action here. So let us know which one of those. Okay, I've got one chat on one of the other streams. Everybody's wanting to go undo. That seems like what we're wanting to do here, Emilee. And I guess that makes sense, right? That's that heart and soul of Veeam, of putting things back together. I say we go for it. Sound good to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's take a look at a scenario. Now, one thing I want to highlight is Agent Commander, as it's announced, is an integration across the combined. Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, okay. Tariq, maybe next time. Ricky, next time. But Agent Commander is an integration across the portfolio. It's reasonable to expect a scenario like this may be one of the first we bring specifically out. So I want to preface that. Stay tuned. Buckle up. Veeam is for real. Emilee, walk us through Undo AI restoring with precision.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a big piece in here we didn't really mention is the data command center, right? But that's going to be kind of the heart and soul of what's able to go in and actually inventory all of those AI agents as well as models and systems, and then understanding where the data is, what's sensitive, and then being able to do all the classification portion of it, right? So that is what that data command center piece is when we're talking about that in these terms. So when we talk about that for number one, right, we can see that we're monitoring the type of activity that these AI agents are performing. And let's say we have these AI agents that have access to your M365 data. So they have access to different sets of files. Maybe they live in OneDrive, maybe they live in SharePoint, and we're tracking the changes that it's making to that data itself. But let's say, for example, somebody was to go in there and they accidentally, started to delete some of these files. Maybe we were just, made a command to say, oh, well, we don't need this information anymore. It was incorrectly classified, or maybe it's old, stale, whatever it may be. And we just decided to make a decision, and that file or that data itself does no longer exist. Well, now with the data command center, because of the fact that we're tracking that file, we could see the changes that was made to that data. And we have an indicator that actually we do still need that data. That data wasn't something that could just be, removed. We still needed that for, other specific outcomes and use cases that we're delivering. We can leverage that undo action as part of it, where we can tie directly into Veeam and be able to go and pull those particular files that were affected due to whatever cause or action we took on behalf of that AI agent, and roll that back directly into production, right? And be able to preserve the overall integrity of it. So essentially what we're doing here is we're making sure that as these items change, as these items are being fully tracked and engaged, we're still able to recover those based off of what we're doing with our M365 solution of being able to protect that data and be able to roll it back with very great precision and speed.
And that's a very likely first scenario. Okay, so we got to be super clear on that. We've made the announcement of this integration, and I can confirm there are betas that we have internally that we've been showing. There are great ideas coming up with this, but Agent Commander is where it's at. Via Tyler, for the next 26 hours, Rick and Emily will walk through all of Agent Commander. I don't know. We're going to need a longer show if that's the case, but Felicia's going to push out a couple of links here. One is you can find more information on Agent Commander either at the QR code here or on the short URL that will get pushed out. And the other thing is we're going to be at RSAC. This is going to be a big event. Emily will be there. I will be there. I think 40 other Veeam folk will be there. And we have a great page where we have some opportunities to engage with the Veeam team. In fact, I think you can even book a meeting with Emily and I. That's kind of scary, by the way. But I'm looking forward to RSAC, Emily. We're going to talk a lot about this, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
All right. I want to send a big thanks to Jeffrey coming to you from the Barncade and Felicia, our producer in Texas. And then side thank you to Lady Megatron, one of the producers as well. And a big thank you, Emily, for joining me here on Tech Bites.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone. That concludes our episode. We will see you next time on Tech Bites.